So, you return, dear listeners. Welcome back. I must admit, many of the scribes back at the Grand Library felt unsettled by the release of our first story, being about Nevermore's very founder. But your return tells us that our work here matters, and that we can reach the ears of our citizens. I'm afraid there is still uncertainty as to the fate of our broadcasts in the future. As of now, the Necrologist Guild is listening intently on our stories, and they have already read in advance the manuscript for the tale we share with you today. And they are even more skeptical than our scribes. Should the Necrologists be displeased with our depiction of Dr. Braga, they will surely cut our funding. But fret not, dear listeners, for we have reached far and beyond to attain the support of individuals from across the seas and even across the realms. To that end, we share with you a message from one such supporter. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Satine Fiore, the Ashen Baron. Be sure to listen for the toll of her ashen tower when it calls in the night. What joys will you find? What scorching entertainment awaits you behind those blackened gates? Find out once the tower opens its fiery gates for you. And now let us continue our doctor's tale. We left off last time with the doctor and his rather rugged expedition, finding their way to the Red River King's temple, where they dove into the belly of the beast itself, and now find themselves at the mercy of something horrid and terrifying. Remember, dear listeners, while today the dead walk our streets and are a part of our everyday life, it was not always so, and today we will see just how unsettling the dead can be when they lack a leash. The shriveled husk of a warrior stepped from its resting place and looked around to the intruders of its temple. It breathed a sharp, hoarse, ghastly sound before pulling back and raising a terrifying wail, twisted and unnatural. The crew were quick to respond to the threat, unleashing a thunderous volley of fire at the shambling horror. The mummy's body jerked and twisted with each impact, but it was no less still moving. It turned its hold on the spear before drawing it back and launching it at one of the pirates. The pirate managed to dodge most of it, the spear only slashing through his arm before embedding itself into the stone behind him. The pirate felt relief, but that relief vanished quickly when he felt a pulsing pain erupting from his wound. He looked at his arm and saw the faint pulsing of small speckles in his arm, shattered bits of the spear's obsidian-like blade that stuck to his flesh. Then he felt it. The wound seeped into his flesh. The veins in his arms started turning black and spreading faster than any infection ever could. The pirate screamed in fear and pain, desperate to rid himself of the anguish spreading beneath his skin. He reached for his sword to cut off his own arm, but by then it was too late. The pirate fell to the ground, coughing up chunks of blood, turned to shards in his throat, choking on his own blood. It was utter chaos. The researchers were mortified, some frozen in fear, others desperately trying to open the stone doors, sealing them in the temple. Whatever horrors lay out there couldn't be worse than this. After witnessing the fall of their comrades, even some of the pirates tossed their weapons aside and reached for the doors. These things were massive. It already took 6 men to close them before. It would take as much to open them again. It was a foolish gamble. Those who reached for the door were the next ones to face the blades of the twisted dead, as 2 more mummies rose from their sarcophagi. Each reached the nearest victim, striking them down and feasting their blades with their bloods. More and more mummies raised until they filled the chamber, each intent on eradicating these wretched creatures who disturbed their rest. Some of the pirates held their ground, drawing their swords and clashing with the mummies head-on. Those who still had the courage to stand at least. So long as the mummies didn't draw blood, Their weapons would be frail and breakable, but they were outnumbering the pirates with each kill. Each block was met with another strike from a different mummy. These withered corpses still moved with the precision and discipline of seasoned warriors. The pirates didn't stand a chance. The doctor retreated to the back of the temple with Viviana, where the entrance to its deeper chambers still stood. He cursed every pirate he'd hired here under his breath as the situation unraveled faster than he expected it to. Dr. Braga called to the captain from across the room. The captain still stood along with another crewman. "This way." The captain brushed another strike away and kicked the walking corpse back. "We'll be sealed in the temple." The doctor replied with haste as he lit an explosive. "We will die here if we don't." The captain knew there was no point in trying to reach the front door, so he pulled his crewmate along with him, only to realize he was pulling on a dying body with darkening veins. He showed his crewman mercy by shooting him in the head instead, and then chased after the doctor. Once all three were down the hall, Dr. Braga tossed the explosive back as more mummies were coming after them. The explosion collapsed the tunnel behind them and shattered a mummy along with it. It would seem that these things could be killed, at least. But the effort was not worth the risk. At least now they couldn't follow them deeper into the tunnel. When the dust settled, what was left of the tunnel behind them was nothing more than rubble and rocks. The doctor examined the rubble and pulled the mummy's spear from its severed hand. "They won't be following us through that. I think we're safe for now." The doctor froze as he turned to see the captain's pistol was pointed right at him, and the captain seemed very upset. "Did you know about those things? Did you know what they could do? What they did to my crew?" The doctor raised his hands and swallowed hard, a cold, impending fear crawling through his skin as he faced the captain. I assure you, Captain, I had no idea this would happen." The doctor's words didn't seem to do much to reassure the captain, who still held a gun to his head, never breaking eye contact. The captain, at least, was steady enough not to give in to his baser impulses immediately, and that was, if nothing else, a comforting thought for the doctor at this moment. Viviana approached the captain and placed a hand on his shoulder. The captain turned sharply, now aiming the gun at her. "This isn't the time to be irrational, Captain. Our research team was also killed back there. Think about it. Why would Dr. Braga spend all this time and resources just to get us all killed?" Her words may not have convinced him entirely, but they gave the captain pause for a moment. He didn't respond to her immediately as he worked through the logic in his mind. He did, however, turn the gun back to the doctor as he weighed his options. All the while, the doctor never brought his hands down, still waiting patiently for the captain to choose what to do. He could feel his heart in his throat. His chest felt like it was threatening to cave in, but he did his best to remain calm on the surface, despite the dread of impending doom. After a moment of silence that felt like it was dragging longer than it should have, the captain finally lowered his gun. "You're going to lead us out of here. When we head back to the ship, I will drop you off at the nearest port, Valvelia most likely. Understand, the only reason I don't cast your soul to the sea of no shores right now is because you're the only one that can get us out of here. As far as I'm concerned, this little excursion is over." Dr. Braga took a breath of relief so deep that it felt like he was breathing truly for the first time. He lowered his hands and almost felt over when he felt his knees about to give way. "Of course, I understand." The captain kept his pistol in his hand, but took a moment to examine his equipment. Meanwhile, Viviana picked up the lantern the doctor was carrying. Thankfully, it still seemed intact. Mostly, it provided some light, so she looked around to see if she could find something else to light while they explored the temple's deeper chambers. Dr. Braga checked on what else he had on him. He had the Zulteca warrior spear, a small knife in his pocket, his journal and pen, and 2 more small explosives. The captain seemed to have 4 pistols, 2 blades, a knife, a horn of gunpowder, and perhaps 30 rounds left. If things went awry again, their odds didn't seem favorable. Right then, the doctor took a moment to pace back and forth while thinking. Clearly, we can't go back. That much we do know. The captain rolled his eyes and scoffed. Brilliant observation, Doctor. Dr. Braga ignored him and continued. From here, it looks like the only way forward might be down. Most likely, this hall leads to the slave pits, where they would keep their next sacrifices. The temple has canals built beneath it to allow passage for the river. That might be our best option out of here. Dr. Braga contemplated whether or not to ask the captain for a pistol, but decided against it. He already seemed on edge enough as it was. Last thing the doctor needed was him thinking that he would shoot him in the back. But he needed an edge. If the captain went rogue again, he wanted to make sure he had some way to defend himself. Something to give him an edge. Instead, he walked over to Viviana and asked her for the lantern. She responded quickly enough and gave it to him. Thank you, Viviana. Then he lowered his voice. At least one of you still has faith in me. Viviana smiled. If nothing else, he knew she was on his side. Two bodies may not do much against an armed man, but he would do what he could to keep her safe. He needed her safe. After everyone was ready to move on, Dr. Braga led the way onward, ever vigilant of the captain's every move. The temple was far more expansive than he had anticipated. The halls led to more intersections and other chambers. There were paths so worn down by the passing of time that they had caved in on themselves. Dr. Braga wondered if any of them had collapsed because of his explosion. Thus far, no more mummies were following them. Yes, they found a few more standing guard, but they didn't seem to move so long as nothing was touched. The doctor made a note of this in his journal. Upon closer inspection, the doctor noticed a few things. First, he noticed that the spear in his hand was not pulsing or glowing the way that it had when held by the mummy. Perhaps they were attuned to the wielder somehow. Then he noticed that the mummies had a chamber where their hearts should be. It wasn't ripped open. No, these chambers were carefully sculpted into their chest, adorned with a golden rim, and within, a stone of vermilion held the spot where the heart should be. He wouldn't dare touch them as they walked, knowing that at any point they could spring to life again. But he wondered if there was a connection between that and the weapon, and why these mummies could raise again after slumbering for so long. I'm beginning to lose my patience, Doctor. Dr. Braga's thoughts were interrupted by the captain's comment, followed by the subtle clicking of his flintlock pistol. The doctor continued to walk onward. I understand, Captain, but this temple appears to be much larger than I had anticipated, and I'm working with as much understanding here as you are. If that's the case, seems like you're just dead weight. Then perhaps I don't need you anymore. This time, the doctor had his own cards to play. With the lantern in one hand, he pulled one of his bombs with the other and held it to the lantern. What are you? The doctor pushed the bomb's fuse a breath's distance from the dancing fire. I've had enough of your cowardly antics, Captain. If I am to perish here, I assure you we will all go down together. Now calm yourself. What understanding do you have of Sulteca architecture, their language, customs, information that will be necessary for you to leave this place as much as I? If you do not trust me to help you escape, then trust that I will look for an escape myself. I refuse to die in this place, but if I must, I will not do so alone. Here they were, at the edge of some chamber and at each other's throat. Their eyes locked, their hands steady, and their actions clear. All the while, Viviana simply looked forward to the room ahead of them with equal measures of fear and admiration. Doctor, she said in a shaking voice. The doctor glanced back to the chamber they were going to walk into and rose the lantern. This room was massive. It held but a single sarcophagus at its center, surrounded by pillars that stretched into the darkness above. Even the captain was stunned by the sight of such a grand chamber. It had barely been touched by the relentless spread of nature or the withering touch of time. But behind it was the most impressive feature of all, a door made of stone, carved in glyphs and symbols depicting a story or a message perhaps, trimmed with the crescent glow of vermilion. The three of them stepped into the room, each with a tool in hand. This seemed to be a dead end but for that massive door. And in the sarcophagus was yet another mummy, except this wasn't a warrior. This mummy was adorned with jewels and rings, dressed in what must have been once fine robes, now tattered and riddled with dust. A sorcerer, then. They passed it to approach the door on the other end, and noticed that there was another canal similar to the ones in the chamber of sacrifices that led from the door to the end of the sarcophagus, where a small plinth was carved into its surface. The doctor approached the door, and here he could hear the faint sound of water flowing. The river! A wave of relief seemed to have washed over them. If they could hear the river, then they could find a way out from here. Viviana hesitated as she pressed her ear to the door. She could hear something else, something distant, but it struck her to her core nonetheless. A heartbeat. Doctor. The words seemed to be caught up in her throat as she tried to talk. Is that... No time, the doctor interjected, seemingly avoiding the question she was going to ask. We need to get this door open. It's our only way out. Viviana nodded and steadied herself. Right. They examined the door for a way to open it, but other than the canal that led to the plinth, there wasn't any other form of keyhole or handle, and the door was made of stone, but this one seemed sealed. Looks like the door demands a toll. The captain kept his pistol aimed at the doctor. What are you do? He pulled Viviana against himself. She struggled in return to no avail. And someone must pay a price. It would appear that Dr. Braga's chosen captain was not as iron-willed as he thought. Rest assured, dear listeners, our story is yet to be completed. Things may look grim now, but you will learn that our doctor is capable of more than you might think. And what of the mysterious mummy, you ask? These remnants of the Tsulteca Empire are certainly more wrapped with mystery than we give them credit for, and that's saying something for one of the strangest cultures we've ever encountered already. We shall see what happens, what awaits them behind that ominous door, and when the dust settles, just who will stand on top. For now, we return to the hush of our archives, but not for long. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart guarded. The red curse has not yet run dry.